It's Tuesday, July the 14th, 2026, and it's time for The Swamp, where I cover daily updates inside our federal machine. And if you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe, leave a comment, click on the notification bell, and I'll keep you up to date on everything in The Swamp, Monday through Friday. Every article is linked below in the description, and the highlight segments from tonight's episode will begin dropping right here on the channel starting around 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to kick things off with the U.S. Central Command. U.S. forces resumed the naval blockade against vessels transiting to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas today at 4 p.m. Eastern. The blockade is back in place. Operation Epic Fury 2.0. I don't know if it's going to get that crazy, but they are conducting strikes in Iran. So it sounds like maybe this whole peace agreement, the 60-day peace agreement, might be off. But I do have a post from President Trump. He might address that. Anyway, there are currently more than 20 U.S. Navy warships and hundreds of military aircraft operating across the whole Middle East. American forces remain vigilant, lethal, and ready. And there's the blockade, or at least a whole bunch of mighty American naval ships, naval vessels, ready to implement the blockade. And not even sure how long it's going to be in place. I guess indefinitely. And a follow-up from U.S. Central Command. Actually, I believe that they posted this one before that one, but that's okay. It all happened today. At 3 p.m. Eastern Time today, U.S. Central Command forces began launching an additional round of strikes against Iran to continue degrading Iranian capabilities used to attack commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The strikes are taking place as American forces prepare to resume the naval blockade against Iranian ports and coastal areas. The blockade goes into effect again at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And we've got this from President Trump. Oil is flowing like never before, thanks to the awesome power of the United States military. A special salute to the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, also the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, and Commander of the United States Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper. Because of them and all members of the most powerful military anywhere in the world, by far, the Strait of Hormuz is open to all ship traffic except for Iran. And that is because of their lying, violent, malicious leadership, which has taken them down the path of total destruction. We will therefore have a full blockade, but only on ships coming to and from Iranian ports or carrying anything having to do with Iranian cargo. Based on highly productive conversations with Middle East leadership, I have decided to replace the 20% United States reimbursement fee with trade and investment deals that the various Gulf states will be making into the United States. Those investments will be massive, but at the same time, extraordinarily good for them and their future. As everyone is aware, we have the largest dollar investment into the United States of any country in history, but these new investments will make that number even larger, and we will see factories, plants, and equipment pour into the United States at historic levels, which will create additional millions of high-paying American jobs. America is winning again, winning like never before. The days of Iran killing hundreds of thousands of people, including 52,000 protesters, are over, and most importantly, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Sounded like he was starting to go off on a tangent a little bit, talking about American jobs and so forth, but nope, that's all right. He brought it around full circle, so it all makes sense. And from Rapid Response 47, this is from Secretary Chris Wright, a quote from the Secretary of Energy. No matter what happens with Iran, we've got to assure that we can get flow of meaningful oil and gas and products out of the Arabian Gulf, and the U.S. military has been achieving that, and we'll get the rest of it here in the video.
The key thing for energy flows out of the Arabian Gulf is the U.S. military. We started the military operations almost 2 months ago. No matter what happens with Iran, we've got to assure we can get flow of meaningful oil and gas and products out of the Arabian Gulf. And the U.S. military has been achieving that. And of course, as the military ramps up and we degrade Iranian capabilities, that'll just keep getting better and better.
Yeah, I guess. Although we keep hearing from the Trump administration that Iran is finished, they're over, the military's gone, Air Force is gone, their Navy's gone, which I'm sure those last two things are effectively gone, except for their little speedboats and dinghies or whatever it is that they have. But yet they keep firing missiles at civilian ships, so they're not completely gone. So I don't know, whatever, not to get into the weeds with that. But look, I'm sure most of their equipment is mobile. They're probably removing everything from, I don't know, underground bunkers or caves or God knows what. Who knows where they're storing all this stuff, but they're finding military equipment into the hands of the IRGC one way or another, whether if we destroyed everything or not. Maybe it's China. Maybe China's been supplying them. I don't know. But anyway, so that's basically all that I have right now with possibly Operation Epic Fury 2.0. I don't even know if it's going to get that crazy or not. Hopefully it won't get that crazy. And maybe they're going to resume talks in the coming days. It's really hard to know for sure. As I've said before, in my opinion, I don't think Iran, the Ayatollah or those in power in Iran have any intention on fully cooperating with the United States and bringing about peace and prosperity for really anyone. No, I just think that they're just going to try to just cause shit forever. As long as they have any amount of power whatsoever. I think they're just going to obstruct and try to destroy and do anything that they can to bring about chaos. But that's just me. All right, so Erica, she says the Supreme Court Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett, they just made an appearance on Capitol Hill today to ask Congress for a $228 million budget. This request includes $200 million for salaries and operations alongside a massive push for better security, marking the first time since 2017 that justices have appeared on Capitol Hill for testimony. Justice Barrett highlighted the stakes by sharing that she has recently had to explain to her 12-year-old son why her security detail sent her home with a bulletproof vest. And that is problematic, not just her having to explain to her son. Look, like that's problematic in and of itself. I get it. You know, it's unfortunately that's just the world that we happen to be living in now. No thanks to the radical left and the progressive, the lunatics, and you know, we're just kind of in this situation where there's a lot of political violence coming from that side, and hopefully things will simmer down at some point, although I don't really see any end of that in sight anytime soon. But it's not just her explaining to her son why that's that's not the most problematic thing. It's the fact that Amy Coney Barrett has been, at least it would seem that these leftists have been getting to her, because when she first joined the Supreme Court, she was ruling pretty consistently with conservatives. And ever since these doxes and death threats and all this nonsense started, it seems like she's been really backing off what she should be deciding on in favor of the conservative side of the argument and siding with liberals more and more often. It almost seems like she's trying to appease the mob. But I honestly don't know. You know, what the hell do I know? To counter rising threats, the requested funds will add 6 protective agents for each justice, set up a rapid response residential security post, build a new offsite visitor screening facility, and hire cybersecurity engineers to block digital attacks. What are your thoughts on the rising costs of keeping our Supreme Court justices safe? Well, you know, I guess, maybe. I don't even know if $200 million sounds like a lot for just adding a few extra security detail to each of the justices. Plus, do the liberal justices even need any security detail? I'm sure they've got the basics. I don't know if it's Secret Service or whoever it is. I would assume it's probably Secret Service or maybe Capitol Police or something like that. So I'm sure they have a security detail of some form, but I somehow doubt that the liberal justices are being fucked with that much. I mean, yeah, maybe the occasional death threat here or there, but I would imagine that the conservative justices are probably overwhelmingly getting the lion's share of the death threats. So this video, they don't really talk. This is just them all gathering and everything. So, you know, I'll just kind of skip to the end because they do say a few words here.
Sustained effort up here to hold back on all rise as you entered. So the Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government will come to order.
There you go. Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government. That's the hearing. And that is the very beginning when everybody's showing up, taking their seats and whatnot. From Brianna Morello, Justice Amy Coney Barrett is discussing all the threats she's facing. It's sad and shouldn't happen, but this shouldn't be an excuse to cave. And that's what a lot of people are criticizing her and accusing her of doing, is caving to a lot of things such as birthright citizenship, for example. Several years ago, would she have voted alongside the liberals with regard to birthright citizenship? Or would she not have done that? Is really, at the end of the day, is she worried that the mob, the outrage mob, is going to show up with pitchforks and death threats and threaten her family, and that's why she decided to vote birthright citizenship for in favor of like the liberal side and not the conservative side? I honestly don't know. I'm sure there's way better experts out there that could really pick that apart just based on her history of rulings and her opinions and all that stuff. But anyway, it's sad and shouldn't happen, but this shouldn't be an excuse to cave. Her rulings have been out of character. If these threats are an issue for her family, she should step down now. And I couldn't agree more if that's true. So I thought
I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, or my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago, around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof.
Yeah, and apparently that was right around the time where she seemed to start changing her mind and becoming more of a liberal justice. Right after that happened. And there were several people on the X platform today that were pointing to exactly that Dobbs decision.
And I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it. And I didn't know how to respond because maybe I lack imagination.
Your son, not your daughter, your son. Like, dude, bulletproof vest, check this out, man. No bullets are getting through this, MFer.
But I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one. It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident.
Unfortunately.
At that point, my teenage son, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars, who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. I was very, very grateful that I had Supreme Court police outside my home because...
I was going to say, what the hell is wrong with these cops? They know her address. They know she's a Supreme Court justice. Usually, if somebody like some online personality, a lot of like gamers and whatnot, they've got a pretty colorful history of getting swatted repeatedly. Eventually, the police, they put a note next to their address or their information, and it gets to the point where they just call them ahead and say, hey, look, we just got a massive threat against it. Like, dude, is everything okay? I mean, apparently that's what it's gotten to these days, to where like they're a victim of a massive swatting, and maybe it happens another time, but the police catch on to it, especially if they're a person of any notoriety, rather than just blindly show, oh, okay, gunshots, let's roll out the Bearcat, let's go.
They were able to stop and meet with and explain to the county police that it had been a false alarm, and so the police did not actually attempt to enter our home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. They are often sent in the name of Judge Salas's son, who I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, is deceased because he was killed by a disgruntled lawyer who showed up at Judge Salas's home intending to kill her, but her son, 20 years old at the time, opened the door and took the bullet instead. Her husband, standing behind, was seriously injured. So I think the message on these deliveries being sent in his name is clear. As Justice Kagan said, federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what you need to do. And if you have any fear, or if it's messing with your judgment, or anything in your capacity as a Supreme Court justice, then you really honestly have got to step down. I mean, that's just really just the pure simplicity behind it all. Like, if that's really the case. But anyway, we got this from Eric Doherty. Just in, SCOTUS Justice Amy Coney Barrett rips the people threatening her life and family, saying her children are now dealing with it, and she was given a bulletproof vest by security. Barrett now has the rest of the vest at her house to use at any time. The leftists are evil, yada yada, quotes and quotes. So we'll get to this. I think this is a different clip.
They have required me my children to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago around the time of the Dobbs leak.
Okay, maybe we did hear this.
My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest.
Okay, yeah, okay. Just interesting that they shot this from a different angle, maybe a different news network camera or something like that. But look, if I'm wrong, just in case I'm just going crazy, I'm just going to repost this. There's a direct link below to my profile. It'll take you directly to this video. And we'll move on to the next one. Barrett has been voting with the left since the day they picketed in front of her house after the Roe v. Wade reversal. She fears the left. She votes with them to appease them. And that's just somebody's opinion, Rugman. So it's just somebody on the X platform I just came across when I was looking up more information for this. Honestly, what I was trying to find, because I found the Amy Coney Barrett clips perfectly fine, well, and easy, but it was Justice Kagan who I was trying to find any clips with regard to her receiving death threats or any kind of threatening anything. If she had anything to give to the committee, I didn't really spend a whole lot of time looking. I spent like maybe 10, 15 minutes in total trying to find something, and I was unable to come up with anything. But anyway, so Amy Coney Barrett's record tells a troubling story. Before Dobbs, she voted with the conservative position in 81% of non-unanimous cases. Since then, that number has dropped sharply into the 50 to 60% range in subsequent terms, including on major cases involving birthright citizenship, election procedures, and administrative power, where she has sided with Chief Justice Roberts and the liberals. The Dobbs leak triggered violent threats of protests aimed directly at Supreme Court justices. If the threat of violence or intimidation can move a justice's vote on foundational issues, we have a constitutional crisis on our hands. And yeah, I would say that would definitely be the case. Judicial independence is not optional. It is the foundation of the rule of law. When justices appear to bend under pressure, public trust collapses and the entire system is at risk. This cannot be allowed to stand. Threats against the court must be met with zero tolerance, full investigations, and real consequences. Yeah, absolutely throw the absolute possible maximum sentence at them. Whatever the crime is that they're committing, if they're committing it against judges or Supreme Court justices, death threats or the like, whatever it is, it's got to be essentially mandatory to give them the absolute maximum sentence, because you got to make an example of these people or else they're just going to keep doing it. No matter who makes them, anything less is an attack on self-government itself. Amy Coney Barrett's conservative voting record before and after the Dobbs versus Jackson women's health issue, which the Dobbs decision was in June of 2022, and they're showing, let's see, 2020, and then the bar chart from 2021, and then after that, of course, it goes from there. But starting off at 65%, then jumping to 81%, and then immediately trailing down to 59, 57. Now she's down to 50%. So look, I mean, this doesn't really prove beyond any reasonable doubt that she's completely caved to the left, and that's exactly why she's voting with liberals a lot more often, the liberal justices, or the liberal side of the argument more often. But there's obviously a case to be made for that these threats are really getting to her. And if that's the case, look, I mean, nobody's going to fault her for it. Look, I've never been in her shoes and having to deal with death threats on the regular. I can only imagine what she's going through. So if that's the case, I think maybe she should be stepping down, or at least considering it. And perhaps she has. Maybe she has been considering it. We just don't know. From Benny Johnson, Senator Susan Collins just called out Chuck Schumer for inciting violence against Supreme Court justices. And I believe I remember what she was talking about. It was a little while ago, but he was alluding to the fact that people should be going out and protesting in front of their houses or whatever. Of course, he was careful with his language, but we all know what the hell he was talking about. Quote, for example, a senator stood in front of the Supreme Court building and called out two members by name, saying that they had released the whirlwind and they will pay the price. Okay, now I definitely remember that. Can't remember if that was Roe v. Wade or which decision that was. This overheated language, this completely inappropriate rhetoric against the Supreme Court endangers the lives of the justices and erodes public trust in our system of government. Damn straight it does.
38% increase in the number of
violent
threats
political rhetoric from the left, from the Democrats.
It is increasingly dangerous to be a Supreme Court justice.
Well, and just by coincidence, we're going to get to a certain situation that's happening in front of Susan Collins' office up in Maine, because ICE officer, there was a shooting involved, which I'll get to in a minute. I just find that to be just an interesting coincidence that Susan Collins just happens to be here.
These days. And it's appalling to me that some of the rhetoric is coming from public officials on both sides of the aisle who should know
officials,
better
celebrities,
than to
other
levy
people of influence,
personal and political attacks against the judiciary and the court specifically. For example, a senator stood in front of the Supreme Court building and called out two members by name, saying that they had released the whirlwind and that they will pay the price.
Yeah, what does that mean, Chucky?
Other public officials have called the court corrupt, out of control, and serving an extremist agenda.
What happens when their power's under threat?
This overheated language, this completely inappropriate rhetoric against the Supreme Court endangers the lives of the justices and erodes public trust in our system of government.
It really does, especially when a lot of these people that are watching this stuff, whether if it's on the mainstream news or if they're watching clips on the internet, like on the X platform, a lot of these people are mentally ill. They're actually mentally ill, and they hear this stuff and they assume that, well, Chuck Schumer's giving me the green light. Let's go. Let's gather up all the picketing materials. And then, of course, you're going to have a couple of crazies in there that are going to do more than just use harsh language. So, all right, so this is from yours truly. I am not finding, what the hell is this? Hold on. Boost this post. That was annoying. Anyway, I'm not finding any remarks from Justice Elena Kagan on receiving death threats, which, like I said, I already explained it, so I'm not going to explain it again, but this is from C-SPAN. Let's see. Justice Elena Kagan on her 2010 confirmation hearing. Quote, many people have talked about how funny Senator Graham was, so she talks about Senator Lindsey Graham. Like I said, I didn't find anything about her receiving death threats or if she's been under attack in any way, shape, or form. All I saw were clips where she was praising Lindsey Graham. And here we go. This is really all I got.
But if you don't mind, Chairman Joyce, before I do that, I would like to say a few words about Senator Graham's untimely passing. Senator Graham, of course, was a member of this House before he became a senator. And in part, I wish to express the entire court's condolences to his sister, the rest of his family, his many friends and colleagues here in the House, in the Senate, and elsewhere. On behalf of the entire court. But I'd also like to make a few more personal comments. It's not very often, well, I'll just say that I didn't get many Republican votes when I was confirmed to the Supreme Court. And that's the usual state of things today. Not many Republicans vote for the nominees of somebody selected by a Democratic president, and not many Democrats do the same for someone selected by a Republican president. And one would not expect such a cross-party, if you will, vote, certainly from somebody from a deep red or deep blue state. And yet, Senator Graham voted for me. And
which is really unfortunate and just outright stupid, because justices are supposed to be completely non-political. As far as my understanding goes, that's why they wear black robes, because it doesn't show any political affiliation whatsoever. Shows that, any kind of opinion they have about anything is just put off to the wayside, that they have no opinion one way or the other on anything. So I think it is really ridiculous, and that's probably been the way that it's been all throughout American history when it comes to selecting judges.
I vividly remember, because he was a vivid person, the conversation that we had in his office prior to my hearing, where he got to know me. It was a long conversation. He took the opportunity to get to know me. He questioned me with great seriousness and great knowledge about my record as Solicitor General, including particularly the various terrorism issues that office had dealt with over the time I was Solicitor General. And I still more vividly remember the conversations that we had at my hearing itself. In the last day or so, many people have talked about how funny Senator Graham was. I think Al Franken said he was the funniest man in the Senate. But what I remember about that hearing was that somehow Senator Graham made me look funny, which is a harder thing entirely, by asking me what I had done on Christmas the following year.
I played that clip yesterday.
Skip the back and forth, but many people said to me afterwards, that exchange with Senator Graham was the moment my confirmation was sealed. So I want to express my gratitude towards him, not only for his support, but for approaching the confirmation process with the kind of seriousness that he did, and the kind of respect he did. And I never got to know Senator Graham very well, but I can see why so many people will deeply miss him. And I just wanted to convey that on behalf of me, and again express the condolences of the entire court to his family and friends.
Okay, well, that was just honestly a complete coincidence that she happened to bring that up. But I did play that clip when Lindsey Graham was asking her what she did on Christmas, and that was on yesterday's episode if you want to catch that. But I gave Amy Coney Barrett a few minutes, and it only seems fair that I played a few minutes of Justice Kagan also, even though it had nothing at all to do with death threats. And like I said, I tried to find one. I just didn't find one. I didn't have any luck. Okay, let's see what else we have. All right, so let's move on to this shooting that happened in Maine, a very unfortunate situation involving Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE agent kills a Colombian man in Maine, traffic stop gone wrong. Apologies that the text is small. On July 13th, around 7 a.m. in Biddeford, Maine, ICE agents surveilling an address for a removal order tried to stop a vehicle that then attempted to flee, leading to an agent to fire shots that killed the driver. Joan Sebastian Guerrero. Immigration advocates noted Guerrero was authorized to work in the U.S. He did have a social security number and was not the warrant's target, and left behind a family. Witness videos showed agents pulling his body from the car and handcuffing him. The incident prompted hundreds to protest in downtown Biddeford, of course, chanting against ICE and Senator Susan Collins, while officials, including Maine's Attorney General, launched investigations alongside the FBI. Left-leaning voices called it excessive force against a legal resident. Right-leaning ones saw it as self-defense. I do have a couple of video clips. I don't believe that I have a clip of him getting into his vehicle and fleeing, or if he was already in his vehicle and attempting to flee, whether if he was trying to run over ICE officers. It doesn't sound to me like that's what happened. The way that I read that was that he was trying to be stopped by probably what he assumed to be police officers in some way or another, and he just tried to take off. At least that's the way that I read it. And if that's the case, and if they opened fire at him when he was trying to take off, then yeah, dude, that's not good, man. That ain't good at all. That is bad. That is not good. Anyway, so I've got this video clip. Let's see if I can bring this. Yeah, here we go. So I don't believe it's graphic in any way. Viewer discretion's advised. I believe that this is just the moment where they take him out of the vehicle and they start putting handcuffs on him. So here we go. Okay, and apparently he had already passed away at that point, that when he was shot, it was basically an instantaneous sort of thing. So this is going to be from Nick's order. Just in, DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen personally gave the order to ICE to suspend all non-urgent vehicle stops. Susan Collins confirms. This is total capitulation to the left. ICE arrests will drop off a cliff, just as leftist terrorists demanded. Again, this is just all Nick Sorter's opinion. Illegals will now sprint to the driver's seat and run, knowing they can't be stopped. Weak. Again, it's just an opinion of his. He does make a point to say non-urgent vehicle stops, so if there is any urgent matter that would require ICE to apprehend that individual, it sounds like they're still going to pursue him. I would just say, dude, like, I don't know what prompted him to shoot at him. Maybe the guy did have a firearm, and we don't know that yet. I kind of find that to be doubtful. I think they would have already been very transparent with that if that were the case. Another question I have is, where the hell are the body cameras? I mean, ever since the Alex Preddy and Renee Good situation that happened in Minnesota several months ago, I thought we were going to get body cameras on ICE agents immediately, as soon as humanly possible. Because when they're wearing body cameras, it's very easy to confirm or debunk whatever it is that's circulating around on social media. And every day that these agents don't have body cameras, it creates a feeding frenzy on the left. And they could essentially create any narrative that they want, and they're just going to run with it. But anyway, here we go.
And we're also keeping a close eye on what's happening in Biddeford, Maine. There are growing protests in the street after the second deadly shooting by ICE in a week. Now, a change from the top, ICE pausing most traffic stops as a method of apprehension for now, until agents get increased training on these kinds of stops. According to sources, we're going to dig into exactly what's going on around that today. Homeland Security saying that the officer who opened fire in Maine yesterday was, this is a quote from them, fearing for public safety. We know that there are investigations that are underway right now into exactly what happened. Now, DHS says that last week's deadly shooting in Texas was self-defense after a driver rammed an ICE vehicle with his van. The three passengers say that the officer was not in front of the van. So there is a lot of camera, a lot of video around these incidents, and certainly the forensics of the cars on the scene that are part of these investigations right now. Important to follow all of that through. Correspondent Alexis McAdams reporting live here in New York. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Martha. So, yeah, still a lot of unanswered questions here as we try to dig in more. Federal sources are telling Fox News ICE enforcement numbers are going to drop drastically. That's something they want people to expect. But they say the pause is necessary because agents have to go through additional training right away. So the pause in most vehicle stops during immigration enforcement operations follows 2 fatal ICE-involved shootings in less than a week. One was yesterday morning in the state of Maine, where DHS says a migrant who was in the country illegally was shot and killed by an ICE agent. The agency says the suspect tried to flee the scene before the shots were fired and was not the target of the operation. There were protests again today as people marched to an ICE facility, an ICE office not far from the scene, calling for a full investigation, as at least one Democratic representative tells people, come and fight back in Maine.
Of course, you
can
already see where this is going
right now. Thank you. If you're standing up and fighting in your community,
a little extra careful.
If you're doing everything you can to protect our values, thank you. But if you're someone who can do more, then we need to do more.
So we'll see who shows up. This comes as some Maine Democrats are trying to replace Graham Plattner in the upcoming Senate race, and they're calling to abolish ICE, something longtime Republican Maine Senator Susan Collins, who's up for re-election, says just doesn't make sense back here in the studio. The story will continue to follow as we try to reach out for ICE.
Go after
and they
abolishing
say that pushback is probably going to be
and then they'll open the floodgates
on the southern border. One of their most effective enforcement tools.
And there'll be no way to enforce it.
Alexis, thank you very much. And
all right, so that is it for at least that clip. I think I may have a follow-up on this. Maybe. Yeah, okay, yeah. So we got the protests. So that happened. Hundreds gathered outside Senator Susan Collins' office in Maine demanding accountability after an ICE-involved fatal shooting in Biddeford. The message from protesters was clear. Vote Susan Collins out. Okay, well, they're standing in front of her office telling the entire state of Maine to vote her out. Please vote her out. From Gunther Eagleman, breaking chaos in Maine, armed pro-ICE American goes head-to-head with a massive screaming anti-ICE mob right outside an ICE facility. While radicals fight to protect illegals, real Americans are showing up to back our law enforcement heroes. That's Gunther Eagleman again, by the way. Not my opinion. Shit. Where's the whistles? Whatever happened to those whistles? You know, the R-word whistles? They don't really have the whistles right now for some reason.
Back up! Oh, you're the bitch that assaulted Nick!
Uh-oh.
You're the bitch that assaulted Nick, aren't you? Hey!
Motherfucker!
Nice.
Show me your teeth, bitch!
She knows what you got there.
Your teeth, bitch!
I think the students had it.
Get out of my way. Get out of my fucking way. Get out of my fucking way.
Just clear a path.
Let go. You touch my shit, and I'm gonna fucking sue you too, bitch. Back up.
Damn.
Back up. You are all over.
No one touching any. We don't want to.
Please.
We're trying to make.
Move.
We will.
Please. Move. No. I want to go that way.
Your path this way.
she put her hands on him for? You know, that's technically a crime, lady. That is assault.
Friend, we don't want you to get hurt. We don't want you to get hurt. We're just trying to save lives.
You're not a uniformed officer, lady.
Get your fucking hands off me. Back up. Back up. Get your hands off me. Sir, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name, fucking cunt? Get your hands off me.
I think the yellow vests are hilarious. They're always at these events. They always try to keep the sheep in the herd. That's what their job is.
You know why? You get fucking dropped. Come to Minneapolis. Oh, yeah? Come through.
Dang, man, that dude, he's got guts. I'll give it to him there. That is absolutely wild. So, anyway, doesn't look like he got hurt or anything. It just appears as though he's completely at it with these people. So, all right. Anyway, so I believe that's all that I have as far as this goes. I imagine that there's going to be more that's going to come out with this. I'm sure that the protests are going to amp up. They're probably going to burn half the city down, a lot of whom live in that city, which is really ironic. But anyway. Okay, well, I paused and I jumped on Homeland Security's profile to see if they had anything to say about this. This is from the Borders Are Real, Tom Homan. This is just a temporary pause while they look at the incidents. I hear a lot of noise right now. This is going to affect ICE arrests, and it's not going to affect ICE arrests. When that alien leaves his home before he gets into the car, you can arrest him then. Which I assume that's exactly what they're going to do. They're just going to try to arrest them before they get into their vehicle. However, if they're successful in jumping in their vehicle, I guess ICE can't do anything. At least that's what the policy seems to be.
Well, that decision was made by the Secretary along with leadership at ICE. But look, it's not a policy change. It's a temporary pause. Look, we had the last couple of shootings. ICE leadership along with DHS believes they want to look at these last couple of incidents and look, is there something that could have been done better? Is there any training that can be improved? Or it's simply ICE doing their job and bad things happen when people don't comply with law enforcement officers. So I think it's going to be a short pause, and I'm confident that ICE is well trained in vehicle stops, and you're going to see us keep moving forward. But this is just a temporary pause where they look at the incidents. But let me say this too: I hear a lot of noise right now. This is going to affect ICE arrests, and it's not going to. Look, I've done this for a long time. You can, when that alien leaves his home before he gets into the car, you can arrest him then. You can wait till the vehicle gets to the destination and arrest him then. Every case is different. Now, we know vehicle assaults are up over 3,400%. So if we can arrest that alien outside that vehicle and take that 2-ton weapon away from them, that's good in some instances. Other instances, we're going to still need to do vehicle stops for a significant criminal. You may want to stop him in a desolate area before he gets downtown. You certainly don't want to stop a criminal alien near a school in the middle of recess with 100 kids in the playground. Right. There are so many circumstances these agents need to look at to make these decisions. So I do not think this short pause can affect the arrest, because the alien can be arrested before or after that vehicle. But this is, what I understand, I'm talking to the director of ICE, it's a short pause just to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Okay. Well, we don't know how long the pause is going to be for. It's definitely an issue, though, that they're looking into. Okay. With the investigation, I think it also said earlier that the FBI is looking into it also. I believe I did read that from somewhere, that they're investigating as well. All right, so moving on to the DOJ Civil Rights Division. The Justice Department announced today that Zhiheng Tony Fang was arrested on a federal charge of false information and hoaxes. Fang made an initial appearance on July 10th at federal court in San Jose, California. According to the allegations in a criminal complaint and court documents filed on July 9th, Fang, age 30 of San Jose, California, wrote a hateful and threatening message and placed in a plastic cover sheet taped to the bathroom wall of a men's restroom on the campus of San Jose State University. And they do have a link for more information on that. And that is the threat in question. Say war wing, mass bomb next week, eat pigs, not dogs, kill all Muslims, Chinks, MAGA 2028, blah, blah, blah. Obviously a leftist. I mean, like, it's just very crude writing, really ridiculous. So he's been arrested. He's going to be going to prison for a while for this stunt because he's a retarded asshole. A photograph of the message discovered on November 5th, 2025. In addition to being a retarded asshole, he also broke the law, and he should be going to prison for this because that's absolutely disgusting. And let's see what the Office of Public Affairs said about this. The graduate student was arrested for hateful and threatening message at San Jose State University. Makes you wonder, where did he get all this hateful all this hateful information? Did he get it on campus? Was it from other professors? Was it from maybe from other friends who gotten an education in certain places in California? Whatever, I don't even know. But the Justice Department announced today that Ziyang Fang was arrested on a federal charge of false information and hoaxes, which you already read. The message was discovered on November 5th of last year and began with warning. Okay, I thought it said war wing. I mean, it definitely looks like a W and not an N, but mass bomb next week, so on. Among other statements accompanied by multiple swastika symbols, a photograph of this message is below. And Fang's fingerprint was found on the paper. A second message was also discovered on the wall of the same bathroom at the time, which it read, and you can read it there. I'm not going to read all that. You know, YouTube probably won't appreciate that. I already stepped over the line a little bit already. And as alleged in the complaint, since October 2024, SJSU Police Department personnel have recorded more than 20 instances of hateful and threatening messages written in men's and gender-neutral restrooms around the SJSU campus. See, man, like there's no limit to how evil that these leftists can actually be. In many instances, these messages include threats specifying a particular date that an attack was allegedly intended to take place and/or weapons and methods that would be used, such as bombs, knives, and shooting. The most recent hateful and threatening message was discovered on May the 14th. That is recent as May 14th. Fang accessed buildings in the days leading up to the discovery of hateful and threatening messages in 16 of the 18 instances where key card access is required, according to the complaint. The next closest number of entries was from a SJSU staff member who worked with facilities and had a reason to be in each building. Surveillance footage also shows Fang entering and exiting the restrooms or restroom areas where some of the messages were written up to a day before their discovery. According to the complaint, the SJSU President's Office provided several email text message alerts to notify students and staff before dates that attacks were allegedly set to take place. When alerts were issued, SJSU professors independently decided whether to cancel class or hold it virtually. University police and the college administration received multiple calls from people worried about coming onto campus because of the threats. Campus buildings on the date specified in the message were described as ghost town, as described in the complaint, which is really deeply ironic. It wasn't even a right-winger. It was a far leftist who wrote all that bullshit, just pretending to be a right-winger. But in reality, right-wingers ain't doing this. They're not doing this shit. It's all fucking leftists doing this bullshit. U.S. Attorney Craig H. Misakian for the Northern District of California, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet K. Dillon of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, and Special Agent in Charge Scott Shelbull of the FBI San Francisco Field Office made the announcement. Fang is in federal custody, scheduled to appear in federal court on July 13th for identification of counsel before Chief Magistrate Judge Nathaniel Cousins, and then they talk about who else is working on the case. So there you go. Just an announcement from the DOJ Civil Rights Division today. A lot of evil out there. FBI Director Kash Patel, the FBI is investigating and offering full resources to the Rapides Parish Sheriff's Office and our brave partners in the U.S. Marshals after one of their deputies was tragically killed today while serving an arrest warrant in Alexandria, Louisiana. The suspect is in custody. Please pray for the deputy's family and friends. Terrible, awful news. And this is from Governor Jeff Landry from Louisiana. Please join me in prayer for the Deputy U.S. Marshal who was killed in Rapides Parish yesterday while simply doing his job. And, okay, so I already read that from FBI Director Kash Patel. Just an awful tragedy. And this is not related, but it's from the FBI. Rapid response account. Cops being cops and protecting our children. 6 have been arrested in Connecticut FBI operation against child predators. And we have more information right here. WTNH.com. 6 arrested. Connecticut FBI operation against child predators. And this is going to be out of West Haven, Connecticut. 6 Connecticut residents were arrested in a multi-agency scheme to target child predators in the state, according to West Haven Police. Local agencies working in conjunction with the FBI New Haven and Crimes Against Children Task Force in July to target child predators. Undercover FBI agents communicated with several people online who were seeking sexual services from fictitious underage and juvenile prostitutes. All 6 of the following individuals allegedly acknowledged the stated age and agreed to provide money in exchange for sexual acts. They were arrested at a pre-arranged meetup location. And we've got the names there. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but they're right there on screen. Ages 37, 22, 36, 33, 32, 36. All of the individuals were charged with criminal attempt at risk of injury to a minor, criminal attempt at second-degree sexual assault, and criminal attempt at commercial sex abuse of a minor. All of them were held on $500,000 bonds. There you have it. Those are the 6 that tried to solicit minors for egregious acts. But instead, they were talking to the FBI. And they are going to be serving some time, I imagine. Quite a bit of time, hopefully. And from Tom Emmer, the GOP majority whip, I called out the Somali gang problem in Minnesota more than a year ago after my meeting with the FBI field office in Minneapolis. As Somali gangs continue to grow in numbers, Minnesota leaders remain silent, and local media refuse to report on the problem. Well, of course they don't want to report on it. They clearly don't want to make any arrests of any gang violence happening because that's going to make their crime statistics look bad. If they don't arrest anybody, the crime statistics will look outstanding. We don't have crime in this city. It's not racist to call out Somali gang violence, obviously not. I'm grateful that we have law enforcement leaders like Sheriff Fletcher who will stand up and speak out against this issue.
Well, I got to tell you, you brought up something that's incredibly important, and I'm glad that you're talking about it. Unfortunately, the failing press in Minnesota, especially in the Twin Cities, is not. These Somali gangs are incredibly dangerous. We had an attack at a high school basketball game last spring where a Somali gang came in and started beating a kid on the bench with a tire iron. We had a shooting at the University of Minnesota during a graduation ceremony this spring that was Somali gang related, and yet no one in the Minnesota media is reporting that that's what's going on. We've got Somali gangs that are causing these problems. Good news is I visited with our FBI last week, and they're taking action, but it's been a long time coming. Well,
all right, man. Ongoing issue up in Minnesota. Nobody really seems to give a shit except for some of the conservatives, the Republicans, probably some who are aligned with the right who have to live in Minnesota. And Eric Doherty, holy crap, a Minnesota sheriff had just exposed that 300 Somali youth went on a rampant crime spree on July 4th and are not facing any accountability. Again, they don't want the crime statistics to look bad. He's demanding Democrats take action as some of them have ties to gangs and the number could soon surge. Local Somalis are melting down, saying to leave them alone. They imported their barbaric ways, according to Eric Doherty. That's just his opinion. But look, if they don't prosecute them, if they don't arrest them, if they don't give them any accountability for their actions of wilding or whatever it is that they're doing, going on rampant crime sprees, you think they're going to do it again? Probably.
Calling on political leaders to act after he says 300 Somali children, some with ties to gangs in the region, went on a crime spree in the area on July 4th weekend.
Those 300 kids that are running in the gang circles are going to turn into 900 kids. This is how it happens. We're at an early enough stage that we can address the problem,
especially when they're coordinating online.
Heavy drugs.
The sheriff's comments drawing blowback in the community, with one city council member saying, quote, that kind of...
Dude, that's such a retarded statement. If there were 300 children that were running around committing crimes, I imagine that some of this has been caught on camera, I would imagine. And if that's the case, then what the hell is he talking about? It absolutely happened.
Rhetoric is not only wrong, it is dangerous. It targets an entire community, creates fear, and makes it harder to build the trust we need to actually keep people safe.
Well, then keep your fucking kids under control then, asshole. Well, maybe not his specifically, but that's what you got to do. You got to keep your kids under control. I mean, look, the parents, they should be charged with the same crimes that the kids are being charged with if they're out there committing crimes, especially after curfew. If they're out after curfew, well, that would be the fault of the parent for not keeping a close eye on their own children that they are responsible for. From the National Fraud Enforcement Division with the DOJ, Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald announces the Justice Department's Trade Fraud Task Force surpasses $1 billion in recoveries and charged losses in less than 1 year, alongside the DHS, the CBP, and the NDIL, and other federal partners. So let's hear some words from that.
In the last 98 days, the Department of Justice has announced over 900 major fraud enforcement actions across the country, including cases targeting billions of taxpayer dollars supporting Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP benefits, unemployment benefits, education benefits, and more. Today, alongside the Department of Homeland Security and other federal partners, we are announcing an extraordinary enforcement milestone in a new frontier of fraud enforcement. That is trade and customs fraud. In less than 1 year since its launch, the Trade Fraud Task Force, which is now a permanent force within our fraud division, has officially surpassed $1 billion in criminal and civil recoveries, penalties, forfeitures, and charge losses. For too long, bad actors seeking to exploit the American economy have decided that ignoring and violating U.S. customs laws is a business risk worth taking. Those days are over. Trade fraud schemes impose severe financial consequences to the United States, depriving the country of billions of dollars every year. These fraud schemes threaten our national and economic security, steal from taxpayers, undermine American businesses, fund foreign adversaries, introduce hazardous goods into our markets, and exploit modern-day slavery. The Fraud Division and the Trade Fraud Task Force are laser-focused on these schemes and will continue to bring the weight of the department to bring bad actors to justice.
It never ceases to amaze me how widespread this fraud is. It's literally all over the place. It's all around us. Hundreds of billions of dollars probably per year just in the U.S. when it comes to fraud of just our tax money alone. Just untold billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars just being stolen from the taxpayers. And I just can't help but think that if Democrats were completely in charge, let's say, for example, in some parallel universe, God forbid Kamala Harris were to win, and the Democrats had the House and the Senate and the Oval, I don't think they'd be doing a damn thing about it. I think they would just look the other way and just pretend that it's not happening. I would just chalk it up to the debt. It's not like that we're going to really do anything about it anyway. From Dr. Oz CMS, here's another big number, $42 billion saved thanks to CMS's program integrity team and the White House Fraud Task Force. $42 billion in savings. Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse. Let's see if he has anything to follow up with that, because that's a pretty short statement. Yeah, here we go. So this is from, oh, look at that. It's from the LA Times. Medicare's new approach to halting fraud is paying off. Are they going to paywall me? I have a feeling they might paywall me, but maybe not. Oh, yep. All right. Maybe I might luck out, might let me read the article, we'll see. Last year, we wrote in the Los Angeles Times that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services was done chasing criminals after we'd already handed them money. We said we were building something different, a prevention-first operation that would detect and stop fraud before the check cleared, not attempt to claw back lost funds years later. Skeptics had reason to doubt. Government agencies announce transformations all the time. The results usually don't follow. So here's the numbers. In fiscal year 2025, Medicare savings from the prevention of fraud, waste, and abuse hit $42 billion. An almost 60% increase over the prior year and the highest figure ever recorded in the program's history. That's not just a line on a spreadsheet. In Medicare's coffers, $42 billion can pay for 3 million knee replacements, or 7 million cataract removals, or 37.5 million routine colonoscopies. That's a lot. Finding and stopping fraud can be expensive, but return on investment also hit an all-time high. More than $22 saved for every dollar spent on program integrity. Holy wow. And here's the stat we are the proudest of. Nearly 70% of those savings came not from recovering money already out the door, but from prevention-first actions. Revoking fraudulent providers before they could continue billing, stopping improper claims at the point of submission, and intercepting payments through prepayment controls before they ever cleared. We promised big changes. The scoreboard says the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services delivered. One key to success has been to finally acknowledge the scale of the problem and adapt appropriately. Healthcare fraud spreads like wildfire. Left unchecked, a single bad actor can become a network. A network can become an industry, and billions of taxpayer dollars can go up in smoke. Many of these schemes are run by organized criminal enterprises that rotate billing addresses. They shuffle ownership structures across state lines and exploit federal programs with the operational sophistication of a successful business. They are fast, they are coordinated, and for years they understood exactly how slowly government moved. It was time to update tactics and take back the initiative. No more chasing smoke after the flames have spread. That meant monitoring the healthcare ecosystem, identifying vulnerabilities, and conducting controlled burns to eliminate the conditions that enable fraud to jump from one community, provider, or program to the next. This shuts scams down early before they became vast and costly. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services now sees networks, not just claims, by integrating enrollment records, billing histories, and utilization patterns across programs simultaneously. We can identify coordinated fraud schemes, not isolated anomalies, in time to stop payment. That is not an incremental improvement. It is a different kind of enforcement entirely. So anyway, it goes on from there. I will definitely have that linked below in the description. I would imagine that there are probably, look, I don't know how integrated AI is with all parts of the federal government, Although I would see that would probably be a useful thing to use AI for, is to just weed through all the data, all the information, all the spreadsheets, and just digging through everything. You know, like I would assume that AI would be pretty effective at auditing records and financials in the federal government. And, you know, it would probably be nearly instantaneously, depending on how you're plugging in the information. So, all right, 42 billion. And this is from FEMA. We're making it harder for fraudsters to exploit disaster assistance. Under the leadership of the president and the vice president, FEMA now uses stronger automated checks to spot fake information and potential fraud in disaster assistance applications. And these new identity verification features work in real time and will not slow down the application process for survivors. Applications with questionable information are flagged, payments are stopped, and cases are sent for criminal investigation. Working with DHS and the Justice Department, the White House Fraud Task Force, law enforcement, and the DHS Office of the Inspector General, we're closing the door on fraud through better verification, faster detection, and coordinated enforcement. We're testing new technologies and expanding our use of advanced tools like the Department of the Treasury's Do Not Pay portal and digital identity risk assessments to catch fraud earlier and stay ahead of evolving fraud tactics. Our message is clear. If you commit disaster fraud, you will face consequences. So even FEMA's jumping in the action with regard to fraud, working with the White House Fraud Task Force. Everybody's working together on this. It's a good thing. Secretary Brooke Rollins, Tuesday takedown. This case shows just how far some people will go to steal taxpayer-funded SNAP benefits. In Tennessee, a woman was arrested after allegedly using the identity of her daughter, Jody Brooke Anderson, who has been a missing person since the year 2017, to fraudulently obtain SNAP benefits. Her daughter's missing. Probably on missing posters, probably registered with, I don't know, maybe the FBI or the Centers of Missing Persons, and she's using her missing daughter's identity to get SNAP benefits. What the hell, man? While this case highlights the seriousness of SNAP fraud, it also brings renewed attention to Brooke's disappearance, praying for her safe return. If you have any information about Brooke's whereabouts, you can contact the link that's on the screen. All right, I'll put it up. I suppose I'll add it to the list of links. They've also got a phone number, and of course they have the mother who was arrested and the missing daughter. Stealing the identity of a missing person equals a SNAP fraud. Tuesday takedown. You steal SNAP and you're gonna get busted. You know what? Speaking of SNAP, I was looking online trying to get the best deal on a type of coffee that I've been drinking for a long time because it's getting crazy expensive in the store. I was trying to find a better deal, so I jumped on Walmart and I noticed a bag of coffee that was for sale on Walmart. The price was okay, but one thing that jumped out, and I'm pretty sure I shared this on my X profile, that coffee is EBT/SNAP benefits eligible. So you can get fancy whole bean coffee, premium gourmet coffee with your SNAP benefits, with food stamps. I cannot believe that coffee is covered under food stamps. That absolutely should be a luxury, but whatever. Anyway, let's move on. Senate Judiciary Republicans. This week, the Senate Judiciary Committee will consider Todd Blanche, who is the acting Attorney General's nomination to be Attorney General. And it goes on to say Blanche is the son of a pastor and a nurse. He worked full-time as a paralegal while attending law school at night. He served as a federal prosecutor and became a highly respected defense attorney. Blanche has served this country with distinction as part of the most transparent DOJ in recent history. He made a name for himself as a friend of law enforcement and a fierce defender of the rule of law. We look forward to hearing his testimony. So it sounds like they're going to bring him in to get him confirmed. This is from Chuck Grassley. As Judic chairman, I met with President Trump's Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche, looking forward to moving his nomination, including chairing his nomination hearing next month. And there you have it. Just images of Chuck Grassley meeting with Todd Blanche. And it looks like it's going to be next month. But wait, I thought I thought they were adjourned for all of August. I thought that they were on recess for the whole month. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe, I guess, with regard to confirmations, or maybe Chuck Grassley knows something that the public doesn't know yet. Maybe he accidentally spoke out on it without even realizing that he did, because there's definitely members of Congress with regard to the Save America Act that are calling on everybody in Congress to not go on recess, that we should stay in Washington and try to get the details of the Save America Act ironed out so it can be passed and put into law. But of course, I don't think that's going to end up happening, because the members of Congress, they just love their vacation. They love taking an entire freaking month off. I did read somewhere, oh man, I can't remember which senator it was. I believe it was one of the senators. No, I'm not going to name names because I can't remember who it was, honestly. But they said that the U.S. Senate has only been in session for about 40% of the year. So the majority of the year, they've not like actually been in the Senate doing what the Senate does, supposedly. All right, anyway. From Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, 77 former DOJ officials urge the Senate to confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. His exemplary record demonstrates he is the right man for the right time. The letter from the former high-ranking officials states 77 former DOJ officials. And I won't go into the weeds with that. If you want to go into the details with these 77 former DOJ officials, it's all going to be detailed here on thefederalist.com. It'll be linked below. And let's roll on from another one from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Todd Blanche, this is from President Trump's Truth Social, of course. Todd Blanche is doing a phenomenal job as acting Attorney General of the United States. Under Todd's incredible leadership at DOJ, murder is down to the lowest level since 1900, and we just saw the biggest one-year drop in recorded history. I thought they were touting that number when Pam Bondi was still in. I got a feeling that maybe they were, but I mean, look, I guess technically it's still correct. Violent crime arrests are up 100%. Robberies, carjackings, and assaults are all crashing. More than 500 million deadly doses of drugs have already been seized, saving countless innocent lives. This is what happens when you unleash law and order on our streets. Instead of protecting vicious criminal thugs and releasing dangerous illegal aliens into our communities like the Democrats did for 4 disastrous years under sleepy Joe Biden, Todd has fought hard for religious liberty, ended the weaponization of our justice system, protected free speech, kept men out of women's sports, strengthened election integrity, and gone to all-out war against fraud like nobody in the history of the Department of Justice. He is tough, brilliant, and 100% loyal to our Constitution and the American people. When the corrupt Biden Injustice Department and radical left prosecutors tried to throw me in jail and interfered in our historic 2024 presidential campaign, Todd stood by my side and fought off the lawfare. He is a great lawyer, always very fair, and every Republican senator should vote to confirm Todd Blanche ASAP. President Donald J. Trump. Rolling on. From Scott Pressler, he says, oh my gosh, the House just voted 215 to 211 in favor of a special rules resolution, which instructs for the text of the Save America Act to be attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. The House is doing its job. Of course, the Senate isn't, but the House is. Speaker Johnson is keeping his promise. So let's have a quick look at this. They're just going to bang the gavel. You know how it goes.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 211. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Well, alrighty then. That's good news as far as the Save America Act goes, that they can attach it to something, which I've never been a big fan of. I don't like how they attach things to other bills and then it starts snowballing into some big super bill that's got a whole bunch of nonsense tucked into it that most people aren't even aware of. But, you know, that's just how they play politics these days. In fact, I would imagine they've probably been doing that for a very long time. From Senator Mike Lee, share if you agree that the Senate shouldn't take its August recess until it has passed the Save America Act. Oh, it's from Rick Scott, my senator. Rick Scott said the whole 40% thing. I didn't even realize that I had attached that into the feed for this episode. So Rick Scott says the Senate has only been in session about 40% of the time this year so far, and there is a lot more to get done. Hardworking Americans work 5 days a week, and the people who represent them should too. In fact, they should probably work 6 days a week. We should not leave here until we pass every single piece of legislation that we need, especially the Save America Act. Florida Senator Rick Scott demands Senate cancel vacation to pass Trump agenda. And he's not the only one. There's a handful of other senators saying the same thing. Obviously, it's not going to happen. It absolutely should happen. All right. From Eric Doherty again. Just in, pressure is surging to historic levels on Senate Majority Leader John Thune to call off August recess to allow ample time to pass the Save America Act. Rep. Andy Ogles, Republican of Tennessee, just joined Senators Mike Lee and Rick Scott demanding no recess until elections are secure. Ogles says if we don't secure our elections, we might lose our country to third world Marxists voting in our elections. The Senate needs to pass the Save America Act today. No August recess. He's right. This is the last chance before the midterms.
Fire the parliamentarian and pass the SAVE Act. You've been very clear as to why the SAVE Act doesn't have the votes to pass and why firing the parliamentarian would create problems here. But are you worried that if you don't do what the president wants, that he's going to criticize your leadership or perhaps withdraw support for your leadership?
Well, he already is.
That could happen.
We're all criticizing his leadership.
It's a well-known fact around here. Sometimes perhaps not.
What, that you're not doing your job?
Grasp around the country, but anybody who follows this process closely knows that we don't have the votes. And the only way...
Bullshit. Talking filibuster, standing filibuster, whatever the hell they call it. I think it's called talking filibuster. He absolutely could have that done. And there's been a number of senators that's already been very apparent with that he should absolutely do that and essentially close the Senate for however long it takes to get every single thing that they could possibly get on the record, take the podium, make the arguments, and I don't think there's a time limit with that. I think a senator can stand there and give a speech as to why the Save America Act should be passed. They could stand up there for 15 hours if they want. Pretty sure that's how that filibuster process works. But he's not going to do it. He's like, well, we don't have the votes. Okay, well, if you don't have the votes, then get the Democrats on record then. Have them explain at the podium exactly why they don't want it to pass. Why are they voting no when 81% of those surveyed of Democrat voters are in favor of voter ID? And obviously, John Thune doesn't want to do that. It's really frustrating.
Figure out a way to get the votes. And even in that case, the Save America Act didn't even get 50 votes last week on the floor of the Senate. But even if you confine it to just the two issues of photo ID...
Doesn't mean it didn't get 50 votes at one time. If I'm not mistaken, the Save America Act at one point got 51, if not 52 votes on the Senate floor.
And, citizenship in order to register to vote on those two issues, it takes 60 votes in the Senate. The only way you could get there is to undo or get rid of the legislative filibuster.
Well, then do it.
And there aren't even close to the votes here in the United States Senate in order to achieve that. So
don't you need 51?
It's an issue we all agree on. We're all for it, and we've all voted that way. But it's not something
is John Thune a Democrat in disguise?
To get done.
I have a feeling that he might not be who he says he is.
Some more Republicans.
Because, dude, it's just common knowledge, and every senator has got to know this. I mean, look, they communicate behind closed doors between each other all the time. They probably talk more with each other off the record than on the record. And the Republicans in the Senate are very well aware of what the Democrats' intentions are going to be. They already tried to nuke the filibuster several years ago, and there were only 2 Democrat senators that were holdouts, and they're not even there anymore. So I think, needless to say, that when they get back in and they get power back in the Senate, provided, of course, that they've got the presidency, they are going to nuke that filibuster on day one, and it's going to be terrifying. And I don't remember who it was that I was listening to, but they said if the Democrats do end up packing the Supreme Court and putting in a lot more liberal justices than conservative ones, they would essentially have the power, well, not essentially, they would literally have the power to interpret the Constitution any way they want. And then they could look at the Second Amendment and say that, a well-regulated militia, well, we interpret that as the National Guard. So as far as the Second Amendment is concerned, the National Guard, they can have the firearms, but no, we don't really see people in the Second Amendment here anywhere. So yeah, that's how we're going to rule. And then the Democrats are going to essentially just ban the Second Amendment for every American. Maybe that's a terrible example. Maybe that's a decent example. I don't know. I heard somebody making an argument for that. But if the liberal justices have the majority, that's exactly what they do. That's what they're going to do. They're going to start interpreting parts of the Constitution that would really fit the left and not really with the positive future direction of the country at all. I don't know, man. That's kind of a scary thought, at least the way that was laid out. From Rep. Anna Paulina Luna, the House is doing its job. Now it's the Senate's turn. All eyes on John Thune. If Save America fails, all of America will know who is to blame. That is absolutely true. We already played this. We don't have to play that again. All right, let's move on. I think I might have one more from Anna Paulina Luna. I do. If Save America is stripped out in the Senate, the blame will fall solely on John Thune. There's a little thing in the Senate known as the amendment tree. It determines the maximum number of amendments that can be offered to any given bill. If Leader Thune deliberately fills the tree, he can block individual senators from offering additional amendments, such as one to keep Save America attached if it is stripped out. Going based off his comments so far, Thune is planning to do this with the NDAA by offering his own version of the NDAA that does not include the Save America Act and, quote, filling the tree, end quote. He would probably plan to do the same with any other House-passed bills that include Save America. He is actively working against an issue that 80% of Americans support. Shame on him. And maybe perhaps it won't work like that at all. Maybe it will be kept in the bill. Leader John Thune will keep it in the bill, and that will give the Democrats all the ammunition that they need to shut down the government in September, because that's the word around the campfire, that they're going to do another shutdown this September, exactly like they did last September, and it's going to be shut down for a long period of time. Not sure how that's really going to work out in the Democrats' favor when they've got an election right around the corner. Not sure how well that's going to work. Maybe it'll work out for them. I don't know. But that certainly could be a reason that Democrats would want to shut it down, which obviously doesn't make any sense if 80% of Democrats are perfectly fine with voter ID and securing that into federal law. All right. And we got this from C-SPAN. This was back on July the 12th, so it's a couple days old. Last night, I did the whole Lindsey Graham thing. I covered all the information that I came across with regard to Lindsey Graham's passing, and I just stuck on that topic for the entirety of yesterday's episode. So I'm playing a little bit of catch-up from yesterday and over the weekend. But anyway, this is a statement from Senator Mitch McConnell out of Washington, D.C. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, released the following note to constituents regarding his hospitalization and recovery. And just one thing before I get started, it could have been typed up by anybody, not to fall down the conspiracy rabbit hole. I would have much rather have preferred to listen to him voice a statement or something that would, in one way or another, prove that he is fine. I mean, why doesn't he just take a selfie? And I looked this up the other day. I went to Mitch McConnell's X profile. It looks like it is Mitch McConnell that's handling his own profile, because there's been nothing on his profile mentioned, not a single post since the middle or the early part of June. So if he's just laid up in the hospital bed, just jump on the X platform, take a selfie, and say, look, I'm fine. I'm not brain dead. Have a nice day. But they're not doing it. So I got questions. Anyway, to my fellow Kentuckians, when you elected me to a 7th term and made me our great Commonwealth's longest-serving senator, you did so trusting that I'd keep showing up to fight for you every day. And over the past several weeks, Elena and I have appreciated both your well wishes and your honest questions about what was keeping me away from the Senate. Well, I believe it's been proven that his wife, I'm assuming that's his wife, Elena, she's been over in China, apparently cozying up with the CCP. Not to spread misinformation. I just read that somewhere, heard that somewhere. Don't take what I say with regard to that literally. Although I want to say that there was some definitive proof that that was actually happening while he was in the hospital. For some reason or another, she traveled to China. But anyway, you all know how folks of my generation often hesitate to share the vulnerability that comes with growing older. Even in the public eye, I feel that same instinct. I can't help it. Dude, it's called retirement. You should have retired years ago, dude. Anyway, but at the same time, I've had more than my fair share of experience with physical vulnerabilities. Surviving childhood polio meant spending my entire life with mobility challenges. They haven't exactly gotten easier to manage with age. And last month, I took a fall, which landed me in the hospital. My doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer a concussion. I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke, and I don't have any tumors or hemorrhages, but I was briefly unconscious and was taken to the hospital. While receiving excellent care over the past several weeks, I've also had to deal with a mild case of pneumonia. I can assure you that I've been a good patient. At my age, I tend to do what my doctors tell me to do. I've submitted to every test that they could think of to help figure out what caused this incident, racking up lots of taxpayer money and bills and whatnot. I'm continuing to do everything they ask to speed my recovery. In fact, with signs of continued progress, I've been able to move from hospital care to a rehabilitation center where I'll keep regaining my strength. Dude, you know, for the 99% of us, if this exact same thing, the same age, the same ailments, same chronic conditions, had polio as a child, but were not a sitting U.S. senator, they would have kicked us out of the hospital within 12 hours probably. Anyway, as much as it frustrates me, this process takes time. And on the advice of my doctors, plural, he's got a whole team of doctors, I won't be able to return to the Senate floor to vote quite yet. But rest assured that in the meantime, I'm not taking a break from the Senate business that matters to you. Well, you know, if Democrats were in charge, of course they're not, they probably would still have the whole COVID rules still in place where you could vote remotely because, you know, the whole COVID thing, even though it was 6 years ago, but whatever, I'll digress. I've been working closely with my legislative staff on current issues and with my Kentucky team who help me provide timely constituent services across our Commonwealth. I've also been keeping in touch with my Senate colleagues on the appropriations process, the midterm politics, and everything in between. You're right to expect your representatives to work hard for you, and part of my decision to retire at the end of my term this coming January was being honest about the demands of Senate work. But I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do. Okay, well then advocate for Save America Act then. I'll keep working hard to get back on the Senate floor as soon as possible, and I'll keep you posted on the progress of my recovery. Until then, I'm so grateful for your prayers and well wishes. All right, so this is from the Office of the Attending Physician for Mitch McConnell, and they say it's not as long, it's a little brief. Senator McConnell has experienced several falls throughout the year that have been attributed to his post-polio condition. He was admitted to the hospital 4 weeks ago after falling at home and sustaining minor injuries. Not even a concussion, so why is he in the hospital inpatient for a month if he doesn't even have a concussion? I don't get that. All right. Quote, a comprehensive evaluation by a multidisciplinary team determined that he had no fractures or cardiac abnormalities or a stroke or a tumor or hemorrhage, but it still warrants him to be in the hospital for a month. Early in his hospitalization, he developed pneumonia, which responded rapidly to antibiotic treatment. Okay, so that didn't knock him out in any way at all. He probably could have recovered from pneumonia at home also. It's just kind of frustrating that, like I said, you know, for all the rest of us, if this were to happen to us, there is no slim chance in hell that we would spend more than a day in the hospital. Probably wouldn't even make it 6 hours. The remainder of his hospital stay focused on physical therapy and strategies to reduce his risk of future falls. We'll make him walk with a freaking walker. Or put him in a hover round. There you go, hover round. He has been medically cleared to continue fully participating in his intensive physical therapy program. Well, there you go. There's him and his wife. Appears to be in good health and in good spirits. So, all right. Anyway, I've spent enough time on Mitch McConnell. I'm not sure that I 100% believe every single word of that, but that was a statement from his office, or not even from his office, technically, or at least as they say, that's from Mitch McConnell himself, even though this is from C-SPAN. I did go to Mitch McConnell's X profile. This is not on it. And I'll just leave it at that. Leader John Thune, honored to be able to welcome Darlene Graham to the U.S. Senate today. I know she will carry on Lindsey's tireless service for South Carolina, and I look forward to serving with her. Sounds like she will be taking Lindsey Graham's place. And Lindsey Graham's, of course, that's his sister, who the Senate and President Trump already gave his endorsement for Darlene Graham. Her other last name escapes me. Her married last name, I can't remember what it was, but anyway, that's Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene Graham, is looking to be the interim senator until the next election, which I want to say didn't Lindsey Graham I think he was just elected not long ago, right? 2024 maybe? Anyway, Small Business Administration, SBA Kelly is right. Without the president, every small business owner in America would have faced a $5 trillion tax hike. Instead, the working families tax cuts are expected to generate $750 billion in new economic activity on Main Street, along with 1 million new jobs.
Hey, Administrator Loeffler, thank you so much for being here. You recently visited small businesses in Kansas City. How many small businesses have you visited since your time as administrator?
Congressman Alford, it was incredible to be in your district and to tour several small businesses. I have probably this year, since starting in January, been to more than 100 small businesses on official visits. Last year, I'm sure it was 2 or 3 times that, given we had full year already under the belt. So that is really where I am able to connect with small businesses and hear the actual concerns that they have.
Exactly. They may not be talking about tariffs, but they are talking about the benefits of the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I know that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't like to hear that, but there are some things in there that are supporting small businesses, not just millionaires and billionaires, correct?
They don't like the American
Congressman,
people
the good
saving
news
money.
is the working family tax cuts, the results are in.
Democrats want your money.
Americans
We'll
were
spend it better
saved
than
from
you.
a $5 trillion tax hike that every congressional Democrat voted for.
Oh, yeah. Sounds
And
like
now,
Democrats.
thanks to the congressional Republicans, I appreciate you voting for the working family tax cuts that saved Americans $82 billion. It saved 29 million workers from paying tax on overtime, 8 million tipped workers from paying taxes on tips, 30 million plus Americans from taxes on Social Security, and the small business deductibility of equipment, of R&D, and the 20% pass-through averted losses of millions of jobs in this country.
All right. Well, as far as the tax cuts go for the one big beautiful bill, my understanding is that in a roundabout way, it gets chalked up to the national deficit over a period of time because they didn't slash enough of the federal government to justify that level of tax cuts. So the money's got to come from somewhere if they're cutting taxes. At least that's my understanding of it. And another one from Kelly Loeffler, because that is Kelly Loeffler right there. And a follow-up, inflation data was down across the board in June, its largest monthly decrease in 6 years. And core CPI fell to just 2.6%. Look, that's still a lot higher than it needs to be. I mean, that's almost 50% higher than it should be historically. I mean, inflation is supposed to be at 2%. And it's been how long? 6 years. It's probably been over 6 years, like 6 years and a handful of months that inflation's been up over 2%. And they still haven't managed to get it back down to 2%. It's kind of scary. It really is.
Key inflation numbers just
normal.
released for the month of June. The Consumer Price Index shows inflation slowing 0.4% month over month, more than economists expected, marking the largest one-month decrease since April 2020. The year-over-year rate now at 3.5%. Our graphic had that reversed before. This comes as Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh is heading to Capitol Hill
Maybe
to
he'll get the
testify
job
for the
done.
first time since taking over at the central bank in May.
Yeah, let's go.
Key inflation.
Heather Warsh. Let's see if he gets the job done. Get our inflation down to 2%. Or hell, even bring it down below 2%. That'd be even better. From Rapid Response 47, expecting a headline number to be negative. This is 4x more negative. CPI fell by 0.4% in June, the largest decline since April 2020, and below the forecast of every single Bloomberg economist. Core inflation also came in better than expected, falling to 2.6% year over year.
Here we go. This is our June release of the Consumer Price Index, expecting a headline number to be negative 0.1%. This is 4 times more negative. Minus 0.4%. That would be the biggest negative drop that we've seen since 4/20, since basically COVID timing, which really affected, of course, all of the inflation data points. So that goes back, basically 6-year low. And if we look at the CPI month over month on the core, also under expectations, comes in
but
at
the
goose
tariffs.
egg. Zero.
But the
Zero
tax
would
cuts,
be the
the
smallest
deficit.
amount. It would equal Jan of 21. To find a smaller change or a more negative change or minus 0.1%, that's May of 2020. And if we look at the year-over-year numbers, year-over-year headline, 3.5, 0.3 less than expected, much less than the 4.2 in the rearview mirror. That would be the lightest since March of this year when it was 3.3. Year-over-year core, 2.6. 0.2 less than expectations, 0.3 less than the rearview mirror. 2.6 equals March. 2.5 brings you to February of this year.
All right. Well, it sounded good, whatever the hell he was talking about. All right. Anyway, pretty sure he was talking about inflation, right? Okay. Rapid response. Oh, wait. No, we already did that one. Let's go to Financial Services GOP. Watch Chairman Rep. French Hill discuss the 21st Century Road to Housing Act on the Squawk Box on CNBC. And that is a long quote, so we're just going to hear him say it right here in the video instead.
This bill has been worked on for years. It is a deregulatory bill. It's a supply-side bill. It has some major tenets. It deregulates HUD programs by taking unneeded environmental reviews out of building a house on a lot owned by a city for the home program. It changes the building codes and gives incentives to cities to have better zoning, less development fees, offer more density in their system so that can bring down prices, increase accessibility for home buyers. And it has important incentives to banks. Since our community banks make 6 out of 10 of our home construction loans across the country, we tailored bank compliance regulations for small, well-managed banks. And we also offered banks new ways to raise capital by changing the rules for both reciprocal deposits and custodial deposits that help a lot of community banks compete with the big banks that you're hearing earnings reports from today.
Okay, well, a lot of fancy economical mumbo jumbo, but at the end of the day, is it going to get housing cheaper? Is it going to make houses cheaper? Because I seem to recall President Trump said he doesn't want housing to get cheaper. He just wants it to be more accessible to average Americans. And the way we're sitting right now, only 15% of Americans can afford the average priced house today. 85% of Americans cannot afford the average priced house because you have to be making, oh man, what was it? It's been a while since I looked it up. It was like $110,000 or $111,000 per year. It has to be your household income in order to afford the average priced house in America. But look, getting rid of regulations, that's certainly a good thing. That's going to make things a little bit easier. And he made some mention of building materials. That would also be a really good thing, removing regulations. I don't know if they've got like a cap on the amount of timber that they can clear out or process. I don't know. Hopefully, that's what it's going to be tackling, is making the supplies a lot more plentiful, because that would certainly drive down house prices, I would imagine. And from Eric, Justin Liberal University, UCLA has been exposed for being blatantly racist in their admissions. Rep. Randy Fine, some groups have dramatically lower MCAT scores and GPAs than another group of people, yet they're all admitted. If you have a race-blind admissions policy, how can that happen? DEI. UCLA, there are other factors. Okay, define them all, so guess we'll hear him out.
Dramatically lower MCAT scores and GPAs than another group of people, yet they're all admitted if you have a race-blind admissions policy. How could that happen?
Because there are a number of other factors that are involved.
Democrats today questioned the idea of merit, saying that cultural competency is just as important.
Republicans cry DEI and say it's unfair. They say we should only rely on so-called objective standards for medical competence.
It's called merit, dude. It's called merit. The one who's the most qualified. Why are you going to give some MCAT test to some minorities or other races of people or women as opposed to men when everybody should be getting the same exam?
But objective according to who?
And there was another moment today when the chancellor of UC
dramatically.
Okay, that was a weird close-up shot. All right. But yeah, so that's happening. I came across that today. I suppose if you want to get more of that discussion between them, I would imagine that the entire hearing is going to be here on YouTube somewhere. Who knows how many hours it is that you have to watch before you get to that exchange. But anyway, probably the full exchange is somewhere. I didn't happen to come across it. And we'll move on to Tommy Pigou. He says he's the State Department spokesman. Since our founding, America has never subjected itself to foreign bureaucrats who want to overturn the Constitution and our courts. We're taking action to make sure that the ICC does not violate our nation's sovereignty. I've got a few posts about this.
The ICC. What steps are we actually taking, and is it possible to dismantle this thing?
Well,
International Criminal Court.
There's a variety of options on the table that are being considered.
An act of
this
Congress.
is a major diplomatic campaign to isolate the ICC, which has really turned into a group of globalist bureaucrats that are just determined to undermine the sovereignty of the United States of America, to target American service members, to target U.S. Border Patrol agents, to threaten U.S. elected officials. Unacceptable behavior. The Secretary being very clear that we have a variety of options on the table. And this is really a continuation of work to protect American sovereignty. And I think importantly, this is not a new concern from the United States. We have never, since our founding, subjected ourselves to courts that want to overturn our Constitution and our own courts. We're not going to accept it now, and we're taking action to make sure that they don't have the ability to do so.
Well, I don't even know why we would set up a system like that or even allow for that to even be set up and have any jurisdiction on us in the first place. That sounds ridiculous, the ICC. And by the way, the ICC, it's the International Criminal Court. It's a permanent international tribunal based in The Hague, Netherlands, established by the Rome Statute Treaty in 2002. It investigates and prosecutes individuals, not countries, for the most serious international crimes, genocide and war crimes, crimes against humanity and aggression. Sounds like something that they should get a hold of Anthony Fauci and put his ass on trial in front of them. It acts as a court of last resort when national courts are unwilling or unable to do so. Anthony Fauci. The U.S. is not a member state. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that ain't going to work then. It never ratified the Rome Statute and has long opposed the ICC's potential jurisdiction over Americans, citing sovereignty concerns, which matches the context of Tommy Picot's statement that he made today, which is that statement right there. And from the Department of State, this is going to be on Newsmax. Marco Rubio is calling on America's allies to leave the court completely. The United States will dismantle the court brick by brick if necessary.
The ICC was created back in 2002 as a function of the United Nations, but the United States has never recognized its jurisdiction and is now trying to curb its influence more broadly.
We've never
recognized the State
recognized
Department
them.
official describing a whole of government campaign with options including travel bans, visa revocations, and sanctions. Rubio is also calling on America's allies to leave the court completely, saying that the United States will dismantle the court brick by brick if necessary.
Well, all right. There you go. Maybe that'll happen. From the Department of State, America never agreed to a world tribunal that can override our own courts and the Constitution. From Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Where is it? Here we go. I thought there was more information. Oh, great. Wall Street Journal. So that's going to be paywalled for sure. And dismantling the international courts. There it is. Paywalled. Whatever. And I guess if you happen to be subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, I don't know why you would be, but if you happen to be, I'll have that linked in the description. And we'll just move on to the next one. That's a bummer, man. It's so frustrating when government officials, where they link articles that are behind paywalls. I don't know why they do that. All right. Anyway, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she says, thank you for your leadership, Governor Kathy Hochul. So let me read this first from CBS Mornings. New York is the first state in the nation to enact a moratorium on data centers, pausing construction on new facilities for 1 year. I guess AI is just not going to have a place in New York State, and they're probably going to fall far behind when it comes to other states who are allowing AI data centers to spring up. Quote, I need safeguards in place to protect New Yorkers, Governor Kathy Hochul said. It's almost as if they don't have enough electricity because they've been trying to roll out renewable energy for God knows how long, and they probably don't have enough to supply data centers, which just around the corner, they've got what they call small modular nuclear reactors that are supposed to be rolling off an assembly line. The first factory is going up in Tennessee, and they're building a couple of more. And I believe big companies like Google, I think Microsoft, and I believe a couple of companies in the UK even secured orders for these reactors. But they're supposed to be able to load them up on semi-trucks and ship them to a data center, and it has enough power to supply electricity to the equivalent of like 10,000 or 100,000 homes or something like that. I mean, they're absolutely wild and revolutionary for sure if they actually work. And anyway, this is going to be on CBS News. I'll just read like just a little bit of it because I've got a couple of follow-up posts that'll explain a bit more, as well as a couple of opinions. New York is the first state in the nation to enact a moratorium on data centers, pausing construction on new facilities for a year. An executive order by Governor Kathy Hochul bans state lawmakers from approving environmental permits for hyperscale data centers. Hochul said Tuesday that the pause will give lawmakers time to create a framework to protect residents and the environment. In other words, they got to scramble to figure out where they're going to get the electricity because I bet they ain't got enough. Hyperscale data centers contain thousands of computer servers and typically use 50 or more megawatts of power, the equivalent of 50,000 homes, to operate. They also require a steady supply of water to keep cool. Well, look, just don't build them in New York. Just let New York fall behind and just, build them in other states that are welcoming them and those states that have the electricity. The moratorium only applies to new projects, so ones that were previously approved will still go forward. Hochul's reason for the temporary ban: massive data centers are being built across our state and the country. The scale and speed of this development has put unprecedented demand on energy and water resources and threatens to drive up utility costs. Look, if I'm looking to build a data center, I think one of the last places that I'd want to build it is in a place like New York. God knows how much they're going to charge in taxes and everything else. Before it goes any further, I need safeguards in place to protect New Yorkers. Hochul said the state still welcomes AI investments and businesses. Well, it sure shit don't sound like that you're welcoming them. And looks forward to helping them grow and thrive. And I'll have that linked if you want to read up on the rest of that, if you're so interested. And to finish up AOC's comment, she says, a data center moratorium gives lawmakers time to put strong protections in place and guarantee AI benefits all of us, not just a powerful few. I think, You know, in other words, they're going to look somewhere else. They're just like, fuck that, dude. I'm not going to build in New York. Not they're going to start putting all these ridiculous restrictions on us. They're going to start, you know, throwing extra taxes at us. We have to pay a wealth tax for some really ridiculous reason. Who knows? I just have a feeling that just New York is just, they're all just going to look elsewhere, because why wouldn't they? All right. I think Bernie Sanders, he's got one from months ago. He says, months ago, my AI data center moratorium bill was called a radical idea. Today, New York became the first state to enact a moratorium, and a majority of voters nationwide support it. AI must benefit all of humanity, not just a handful of big tech billionaires. So in other words, he wants to put a stop on AI development probably all the way across the country, because it would give the CCP a leg up, because it would allow China to surpass us in AI development. That's not to be all conspiratorial yet again, but I have a feeling it's probably rooted in that maybe. Such as U.S. Senator John Fetterman. He says China wins by rolling out this moratorium. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signs a data center moratorium and executive order, and I believe he's absolutely right. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz, there is literally no company that wants to put a data center in New York because their policies are so hostile to energy and business. So they are banning something that would never happen anyway. And New Yorkers apparently don't want jobs. I mean, because that is what data centers bring. They bring high-paying jobs. And John Solomon, he says New York expected to sign a statewide moratorium on data centers, the first in the U.S., which they already did. That happened earlier today. Well, according to Grok, around just nine operating large-scale data centers are in New York State as of July this year, with few, if any, being dedicated hyperscale AI facilities. Most sources report 150-plus total data centers statewide, including smaller co-location enterprise ones concentrated in New York City, Metro, and Buffalo areas, but only a handful qualify as large, power-hungry facilities suitable for modern AI workloads. Recent statewide moratorium targets new hyperscale AI data centers, which they define as a data center consuming more than 50 megawatts of electricity due to energy and water concerns, but existing approved projects will continue, which of course we know that. So anyway, I guess the number is 9. That's roughly about how many that they have. And it sounded like Grok wasn't even willing to give those 9 the title of Hyper Center or whatever. And this is from HHS Rapid Response. We hate diarrhea as much as HQ News Now, or Headquarters News Now. But here's what they didn't tell you. Here, let me just start with this because we'll get some context into what the hell they're talking about. Cyclosporiasis. Cyclosporiasis? The parasite causing the current explosive diarrhea outbreak, kind of hilarious, but I guess not if you have it, is at a level 20 times higher than its yearly average. This comes just 1 year after the Trump administration removed a cyclospora tracking mandate from the Foodborne Illness Active Surveillance Network. And now we can read the response from HHS, Health and Human Services. They say, this is what the HQ News is not telling you. Cyclospora cases naturally rise every year between May and August. Cyclospora tracking never stopped. The CDC is actively working with 3,000 health departments to gather data. There are 843 confirmed cases with 1,500 additional cases currently under analysis, and the FDA is doing its job, investigating the outbreak alongside the CDC and state and local partners using established epidemiologic laboratory and traceback tools. Okay, trying to correct the record a little bit, in case you came across that earlier. All right. From VA Secretary Doug Collins, proud to partner with Secretary Kennedy on accelerating psychedelic medical treatments for veterans suffering from mental illness. And okay, just making sure that wasn't a video. Typically I'd play the video before we dig into any of the article material. And this is going to be on military.com. The VA and HHS launch new psychedelic therapy partnership that will impact more than 1 million veterans. Seeking to expand treatment options for those veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Health and Human Services on Monday launched a 5-year partnership designed to accelerate research into psychedelic therapies and prepare the VA to deliver them if they receive federal approval. VA Secretary Doug Collins and Kennedy signed a memorandum of understanding at VA headquarters implementing President Donald J. Trump's Executive Order 14401, which directs federal agencies to accelerate medical treatments for serious mental illness by expanding research and increasing clinical trial participation and improving coordination among agencies responsible for evaluating and delivering new therapies. The agreement establishes closer collaboration between the two departments to expand clinical trials, train therapists and physicians, share research data with the Food and Drug Administration, and develop treatment protocols so veterans can more quickly access psychedelic-assisted therapies if the FDA determines they are safe and effective. Nearly 6 million veterans live with mental illness or substance use disorders. About 1 million of them have serious mental illness, Kennedy said during the signing ceremony. These Americans answered our nation's call, and now it is our turn to answer theirs. They deserve more than sympathy. They deserve every opportunity to heal. Kennedy said the administration intends to follow science rather than politics as it evaluates emerging therapies. Quote, strong evidence, not ideology or politics, must guide our medical decision-making in this country. These studies will help determine which therapies work, what the proper dosage is, which patients benefit, and how we can deliver these treatments safely. And there's the memorandum of understanding that they signed. What the partnership does, the memorandum calls for the departments to increase participation in psychedelic clinical trials, train therapists, nurses, and physicians involved in psychedelic-assisted therapies, collect and share data on safety, effectiveness, and costs, share research findings with the Food and Drug Administration to support review of successful therapies, develop educational materials for veterans and patients if new treatments receive approval. According to the VA, the department is currently participating in 20 active clinical trials focused on psychedelic therapies for mental health conditions, supported by more than $23 million in external funding. While the announcement marks a significant expansion of federal cooperation, officials emphasize that psychedelic-assisted therapies remain experimental and will not become a part of routine VA care unless they receive FDA approval. Scientific discovery alone is not enough, said Secretary Kennedy. When the FDA approves a new therapy, patients should not have to wait for years for the healthcare system to catch up. That's why we're acting now. This agreement begins preparing the VA today by developing clinical guidance, training providers, establishing treatment protocols so that veterans can benefit without unnecessary delay. All right. And preparing for FDA approval, so that's going to take a period of time, which they get into the details with that. Also expanding the psychedelic research. And yeah, so it goes on for quite a ways. Breaking down government silos. And it looks like that would finish it off. Again, it's on military.com. That's going to be the only military.com link below if you want to read into the rest of that. From the White House, July 13th stands as a reminder, never surrender in the fight to make America great again. And I think we all know what happened on July 13th when they took a shot at President Trump. Actually, they were successful in shooting him in the head, literally. Just by the grace of God, he survived it. He absolutely had God watching over him that day. Let's have a look at this.
Donald was the young man who was going to conquer Manhattan. He takes chances that would make a less daring man shudder.
To think about the arc of where he's been, it's like some sort of mythical story or something.
This sounds like political presidential.
It's crazy how much you look like Barrett back, or Barrett looked like him back then.
To always get stronger when challenged.
My God, that guy's got resilience.
Those who deal with you underestimate you and live to regret it.
It's always good to be underestimated. It is not about politics. It's about our love for this great country, America, and we're not going to let it fail. I will fight like no one has ever fought before.
Trump is the bodyguard of Western civilization.
You want to talk about a fighter, a walk through fire? He's an absolute savage.
He knows that this is much bigger than him. This is about the American people. They have no idea what they have unleashed. He was ready to go face the cameras and come out swinging.
What will future Americans say we did in our brief time here on Earth? It will be defined by your vision, your perseverance, and your grit. Nothing will sway us, nothing will slow us, and no one will ever stop us. We are Americans. Ambition is our heritage. Greatness is our birthright. And the future belongs to us.
Well, one thing's for sure, he's taken more rashes of shit than any other politician in American history, hands down. I think probably anybody else in his position would have probably quit a long time ago. It's absolutely wild that he's still going. Anyway, Secretary Sean Duffy, freedom doesn't ring, it revs. So get ready for another historic ride as we continue to celebrate America's 250th birthday. Looks like I'm going to be finishing up with this from the White House. Built for speed, powered by freedom. The first ever pit stop at the the White House. That should make Democrats absolutely overjoyed because they were so happy about the UFC fight. Next stop, Freedom 250 Grand Prix in Washington, D.C. Actually, let me... Okay, had to make an adjustment.
Wrapped up the pit stop, first ever pit stop here at the White House. What an incredible experience, and this is all to celebrate America's 250th.
We can't wait to see you August 23rd. What do we have to wait for, David?
This was just a little taste of the pit stops that we're going to have in a race scenario. We're all going to be pushing the limits, everything you can. It's going to be beautiful chaos is how I would explain it. Goosebumps, it's everything you're going to want to be. It's the best way to celebrate America's 250th, so make sure you're there.
Well, hell yeah, man. There you go. The Indy cars racing in Washington, D.C. for the first time ever, I think. Pretty sure that's the case. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow night as we explore the swamp, Monday through Friday. Also, I post daily on X, which is where you can peek at the content for tomorrow's episode. And don't forget the video clips from tonight will begin dropping on the channel tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for watching. God bless the troops and God bless America.